Okay, we are going to move D under item 4, miscellaneous.
Okay.
Sherry?
That's you.
Yep.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, yep. Who's gonna eat it? Okay, now. The first one is like, by the time we got broccoli inside out.
Good.
So hi, my name's Jerry Mayer, and I'm with Coronel Peters Mayer Associates. I'm just coming to do like an annual presentation of your audit. The city of Sac City has an audit firm do like a yearly audit, the financial statements. And so I'm just going to kind of explain a little bit about what procedures and types of things that we do. I had a couple of my auditors come over for about 3 days. And then I'm the partner in charge, so I reviewed all the work papers and came back and went through the results of that and Sandy here. And a few things that we do is we kind of look through the general ledger detail, like we run off a report of all the receipts and disbursements for the whole year. So we look through that, see if anything looks unusual. We're out of place, and I test a few things, like we pull out a few invoices at random to see if they're properly in the right spot. Have they had a backup invoice? Have they been approved in the minutes? Are they published in the paper? Do they look like they're a public purpose? We look at any travel expenses, make sure that they look like they're reasonable, that you don't have any, if you go to a meeting, if you have a spouse come with, they pay their own way. There isn't any, leave in Tahiti or, anything, unusual. They wouldn't be, in the realm of a normal city. That's the type of stuff we look for in disbursements. Payroll, we look at payroll. We pull a few payroll checks at random to make sure that people are getting paid, what you guys have authorized them to. If they're authorized to get $10 an hour, they're not getting, paid $20 an hour. And trace a few things in the timesheets. We look at, then we also look at receipts too on the other side. I send out verifications to, the state of Iowa, property taxes, if there's any larger contributions from grantors, or, you make sure that their records match, your records. And, make sure they're in the right spot and everything like that. And then also, besides just regular financial statements, receipts and disbursements, since you're a governmental unit, we look at compliance issues too. There's certain things that a city, or a county has to do that like a private business doesn't have to. So you have to publish minutes in the paper, you have to have, publish agendas, publish wages, once a year. And we're obviously like people at AIG, they don't have to publish their wages because they're not in the public, You might be. You might be from now on. And so that's just kind of a summary of, the types of stuff, we look at. And then I just going to go over a few highlights on the audit report, and then I'll open up to any questions anybody has. And then after tonight's meeting, then what I do is I make a PDF copy of it. And we actually send a copy to the Auditor State's website, and then it gets posted on their website so that you guys or anybody in your community can go online and look at the copy of the audit report. And you can look at any city or the state of Iowa or anybody that has to be audited by the state of Iowa. It's published on their website. That's part of open communication. I'm just going to go through a couple highlights then. And we'll bring you to page 11. And the first few pages were an audit opinion that just kind of explained what I did. We looked at the financial statements and fairly present, the position of the state. And then there's also a few pages that added in a management discussion analysis where he pointed out a few things. And then something that started a few years ago where the city officials need to put it in some kind of management discussion analysis where it's kind of basically leaning towards, you recognize this is your financial statements, then we're auditing these financial statements. So we put in a few highlights about comparing from one year to the next and what you think might happen, in the next few years. So it'd be important to comment if you have some major industries that made up 50% of your taxpayers and they were leaving or something like that. So there'd be, some highlights if you have something like that to report. And that's the place to put things in there. Page 11 and 12 is just overall summary of the city of Sac City. It shows on page 12 that the total cash in the bank at the end of the year was $942,000. And part of that is with utilities and part of that is with the governmental funds. So it's about 50-50, at the end of the year. And you might think, well, that's a lot, of cash to have, in the bank. But if you look over on page 11, you can see the total disbursements for the city was $4.4 million, for a year. So it doesn't sound like, so then you look at it in that perspective, it's not as much as you think. And the reason for this format is it kind of shows what the taxpayers' dollars are paid for. We put the disbursements first on the left side, and if there's any direct receipts that go against a certain function, it's quoted against it. And so for an example, under Public Works, which is like, garbage, garbage, I can't remember the place. Mostly it's roads, and then you can see that road use goes against, is direct receipt against, the Public Works. So when you come on to page 12, you see these negatives in governmental activity. There's negative $290,000 in public safety, $100,000 in public works. Well, that's what the tax dollars are supporting. They're supporting, the police and the fire and the park and rec and general government and debt service. And so if anybody says, what are my tax dollars supporting, that's the reason that, this format is set up. And that's why I kind of go through this with you, because it's different than Sandy's books that you get, from month to month. You see each fund, what's in each fund. And so the rest of the audit is pretty much in the format that you used to see. That's the National Auditing and Accounting Standards Board decided was the format that they wanted all the cities whether you're on cash or accrual. And it should go back to on Sandy's record, he didn't do any year-end, adjustments to reclassify it. So just so that you know that they do a good job, and I didn't find anything coded in the wrong fund or anything like that. So I didn't make any adjustments. And then I was just going to skip ahead to, and I can go back and go through some of this stuff later too. And everyone's usually interested in what kind of comments or recommendations. So I'm just going to skip to the back. That's it. I start on page 40. That shows that that's a letter that I write, and that shows that we looked at your internal control system to see if everything looked like it was working, and that you had certain things set up okay. One thing I mentioned, like we looked at some utility billing too when I went through these receipts. Just to make sure that if you had an ordinance that says you're going to charge this much per 1,000 gallons of water, that's what actually was charged. Because once in a while you get a little glitch, in software, because you rely on your computers too much. You think it's all set up in there. But once in a while there's a little glitch and something doesn't happen right. But, for example, one time our city put in instead of 5% sales tax, we put in 5%. So we didn't really realize that until we do the sales tax like a month later and go, geez, it's not my sales tax. And then by then it already been